Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're so excited to have you here. Today, I am joined by Cindy, who's going to be talking to us about the real cost of a violation. She does some amazing work over at One Place Childcare Software. Before we get started, though, we're just going to go over some quick tips for the webinar. You'll see some on-screen CTAs, which are located in the bottom left of your screen. With some helpful resources we'll be giving throughout that you can click on. And then we also encourage you to ask any questions in the Q&A, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll either answer the questions as they come in, but there will also be allocated time at the end for all of your questions. And with that, let's get started. I'll give it away to you, Cindy. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Harmony. Well, hello. Hi, I'm Cindy Morgan. I'm the Vice President of Operations here at One Place Childcare, which that really doesn't matter at all. But what I'd like to rather do is start off by saying, I've walked a mile in your shoes. Years and years ago, I had my own centers in California, and it was probably one of the most joyous experiences of my life. But I did not really have a background in all of the things that behind the scenes it takes to actually run a business. And so if you're anything like me, stick with me. I'm going to share some tips for things that you can do to protect your business and your investment and all of your team as you are operating here in the United States. So we're going to dive in. I've got a lot to share with you today. And at the end, I'll make sure that Harmony and the team here have my slides in case you'd like to have them. You're more than welcome to have them after the webinar. All right, so from reactive to audit ready. And I'm going to tell you that we've done a deep dive study of all of the licensing violations across all 50 states. And even in Canada, we actually have a lot of clients in Australia and New Zealand and branching into the UK. So we have sort of a global perspective of all of the things that it takes to keep kids safe in childcare. And we're going to share a little bit about, the everyday real pressures that directors and owners are experiencing right now. So without further ado, we'll just kind of move on here. All right, I've got something in my way there. Let me move that out of the way. All right, so very first thing I want you to do, we are going to be interactive. So please use the chat and tell me, when was the last time you felt truly confident you were inspection ready at every location, in every classroom? You've got it nailed down. There is no way a licensing analyst is going to uncover anything that hasn't been done. And be honest, we're amongst friends here. There isn't a single center I've ever come across that hasn't had a licensing violation or two. So just let me know in the chat, when was the last time you felt like it really doesn't matter when licensing shows up? Not only does my team know what to do, we can prove we're doing it. So go ahead and put your thoughts into the chat. December 2025. Great. That's actually not that bad. That's not that long ago. Eveline, thanks for your last inspection. Okay, Taylor, terrific. Well, if some of you are passing with flying colors, then we need to talk after this webinar, because things might be getting ready to change a little bit in your area. I'd also love to know, what state are you operating in? Because that may have something to do with this, and I'm going to share what I know about some of the changes that may be coming over the next, 1 to 5 years. So love that you feel inspection ready. Love to hear where you're from. Great, Felicia, too. I'm in Texas. Valerie, hi from Texas. Lots of Texas. Massachusetts, woo! Massachusetts is a heavily regulated state. Anybody from California, my home state, probably the most regulated state in the nation. Anyway, Virginia. Oh, I love myself some Virginia folks. Some of my favorite people live in Virginia. Yay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you feel inspection ready. I'm going to tell you that you likely are not aware of some of the things that could be happening. Maybe not at your location. Maybe you do have it all dialed in. but I can certainly show you a way to go paperless that'll leave you feeling even more confident as we move forward. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to show you some of the data that we have, because data tells a story. What you're going to walk away from this webinar with is US specific data and practical tools you can use starting Monday. So I'm going to give you insights into the national picture, licensing data across 6 states, 6 of the largest states, which are California, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas. That gives us a good cross section. Hello, Michigan. We're going to talk a little bit about the true cost to your business, in how it's showing up in your insurance premiums, in your labor costs, in paper, and in brand reputation, and how those compliance gaps are really costing operators more than they really recognize. Where violations truly come from, what are the 5 categories that are accounting for nearly 40% of all violations nationwide, and strategies that actually work. So 5 practical moves you can take right away to reduce liability. Who wants to reduce liability? Nobody wants to get into a lawsuit. Nobody wants to have some terrible child incident happening, right? God forbid. Because when you get into this business, you get into it, and if you're here more than 5 minutes, you stay in it because you love kids. You love teaching kids. You love caring for kids, and you care deeply whether they're safe or not. Am I right? I think I am right. I bet that you would all agree with me. So there are ways to reduce the number of things that leaders are trying to hold together on a daily basis manually. And then multi-level protection. If you are in that realm of, gee, I've been running my center a long time, I really want to grow and scale it, I'm thinking about opening up a second location, or a third, a fourth, a fifth, that simply means you really have to have tight operational standards and cadences in order to protect your business and operate in a very consistent and strategic manner. So we're going to talk about all these things. So why does this data matter? It matters because one place was built by people like me, people who have lived and worked in early childhood education globally. So over 4,000 centers are using us on a day-by-day basis. We have a combined over 170 plus years of early childhood experience under our belt. 29,819 locations across these 6 states were studied. And we want you to know that we are ISO 2701 certified. So what does that mean to you? In layman's terms, our data is extremely secure, which is very, very important. Our system was built by people who understand what it feels like to walk into a licensing inspection unsure of what may or may not have been done. And you want to go from, I think we're compliant, to I know we're compliant. So what do 213, 594 violations look like up close? So I just got done telling you we looked at almost 30,000 licensed childcare operations. You've got the number of total violations. That's an average of a little over 7 violations per site per year, or per inspection, depending on what area you live in. It's actually costing you, hold your breath, because this number startled me, it probably will startle you, $37.3 million in staff labor to remedy this. That's a huge amount of money we're leaving on the table when we could be automating all of this and not having to worry so much. So most violations, let's all get our shoulders down, because if you were just listening to me, your shoulders were probably going like this if you own your operation, or if you're the principal responsible party, you probably were starting to tighten up and think, oh my goodness, no, oh, this sounds terrible. The severity of these are typically very low severity for the majority of them, okay? Most violations are not catastrophic, and oh my gosh, I've got only my Florida slide in here. I have a better one that actually showcases all 5 states, but just looking at Florida here as an example, you'll see the majority are not severe cases. But for that tiny 2% there, where there is a severe violation, that means there is an immediate risk to the child. And while these are rare, they can be career ending and they can shut down your center faster than you can say Jiminy Cricket. And that's the last thing we want, because we know we already have a shortage of operators already in the market and across the board in various areas of the United States. So, man, I will have to update this and send you the updated slide back to Harmony that she can share with all of you. But as you can see, we don't need to get hysterical over this. However, I will tell you, there are a lot more cases of significant child injuries, abuse cases, and even molestation cases are on the rise globally. Why? Because regulations are hard to comply with, and it's hard to keep track of absolutely every data point without a system. So let's move along here. The 5 categories that are driving almost 40% in the US of all of these violations is physical environment. So this is your facility, and I see everything from a light socket not being covered to a gate that simply won't latch completely properly, and so that's a risk of elopement, to worn out supplies, school materials, shelving that hasn't been anchored to a wall. There's just so many things that can present a risk to a child. Child records are another area. Now, that one kind of startles me, because how many of you, put in the chat feature right now, how many of you are using a center management system? I can't imagine that in 2026, most of you aren't using something like ProCare. I hope you're using Playground. I think Playground is a huge benefit to everyone. We partner with Playground. We love our friends over at Playground, and we promote their software. It's a great program. If you haven't checked it out, happy to even be someone who's on the outside. I do not work for Playground. So if you want to talk to somebody that is not a Playground representative to ask why I like it, come talk to me. Look now at the third item here, playgrounds. Hence a good topic for us to talk about on a Playground webinar, right? But these are our play structures, and your play structure is one of the reasons why you honestly want to have a really good system in place, because look at the number of violations that are associated with a playground. This is where kids are getting their energy out. This is an area that is really anchored to a large number of violations on an annual basis. And it's just so easy. It can be fall zone material that looks good from a distance, but isn't quite at the depth to prevent an injury from happening. There's all kinds of things here that we can talk about. Staff records and background checks. This is one of the newest features One Place has actually conquered for you. We can actually help you to automate the reminders to all of your staff when a piece of documentation within your staff files needs to be updated, renewed, re-sent to your leadership team, and you can link it all inside of One Place and set up reminders and notifications, helping you to just have to glance at a dashboard to know whether or not all of your staff files are up to date. All right, and then staff training. We know training is important, but I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you something you probably don't want to hear. We adult learners probably have the shortest attention span known to man. We think it's children, but it's really not. It's we adults. We tune out during training so fast, so quick, it will make your head spin. The only way to ensure that the training is meaningful is to condition it into daily practice. And that takes more than just training. So more on that in just a minute. All right, so we're going to move along here. Your biggest exposure is oftentimes in your filing cabinet. I would not have imagined that, would you? So directors are running around our facilities crazy, right? And they are trying to keep up with all of the things that need to happen on a daily basis. And of course, they've got a team of people who they love and trust. And your staff is probably wonderful, probably are doing everything they possibly can to make sure that all of their tasks and all of the safety checks that they're supposed to do on a daily basis are getting done. But I'm sorry, I can't think of another industry in the universe where in the middle of your day, no matter how well you've planned it out, suddenly a child becomes ill. Suddenly a child falls down. Two children are having some challenging behaviors in the classroom. A parent unexpectedly shows up and has had a crisis, needs to pick up their child. Someone calls in sick. Licensing shows up. The fire inspection shows up. It seems like it's never ending distractions. And so help a director out. I want to say one other thing. If you're on this call and you are a director, you are in a really tough scenario here. Here's why. Large brands and small, and even future employers can go and look at your compliance track record because it's all public information, and they can make some assumptions based on that compliance track record. And if you've ever looked at your compliance track record, not everyone, unless you've been trained in childcare, would even fully understand what some of those deficiencies or citations really are about. They're just going to see this alarming message of, oh my gosh, they had 8 violations or they had 7 violations. Doesn't matter whether you corrected them. Doesn't matter whether you resolved them. None of that is what they're going to see. So one of the things to keep in mind that is a metric that is very, very difficult to actually measure is how many parents and families aren't even making that phone call to your center to come take a tour and perhaps consider your program for their little one because they've Google searched the compliance track record and scared them to death. I promise you it's happening more often than you might even realize. So one of the things you can do about this is to reach out to me. I'll show you how we handle some of these things, but just keep in mind that every time these records are kept on paper, it means someone has to file that paper, someone has to grab that paper, someone has to audit that file and check it off and make sure that everything in that file is accurate, up to date, and includes all of the data that it's supposed to include. And this is where gaps start to occur. So it could be an expired background check. It could be an incomplete health exam. It could be a set of immunizations that weren't kept up to date. There are so many moving parts to this. No one human being could ever keep up with it all. All right. So moving along, daily operations. This is where consistency tends to break down. I'll give you an example. Just, we all go to the dentist, right? We all love our dentist. Our dentist has the most beautiful teeth. They're wonderful. They're brushing and flossing after every single meal, in the morning, before bedtime. Lean in. Guess what? The real hard fact is no one is doing it perfectly 365 days a year without fail. They never miss a beat. Impossible. No human being can do that. This is where technology really helps us. It supports us by letting us know when something is due, when something's been done or not done. But even more importantly, it can identify the gaps where an issue can start to arise. So let's look at this for a minute. Playgrounds. Equipment inspections are done verbally, or maybe it's a visual that one of your staff members goes through, and maybe they've even got a paper checklist on their little clipboard that they're going through. But after a while, that becomes a rote exercise that they're not really thinking about. When you build it in a digital platform, not only can they sign off on it, which tells you specifically who the person was that did that actual playground inspection that day. And hey, if you're a staff member, listen close. That's protection for you. A paper document can be lost, disposed of, coffee can get spilled on it, it can be misfiled, but a digital record actually protects you from erroneous allegations. Physical environment. If you're the person who is making sure that chemicals are locked in a storage cabinet, that personal backpacks, purses are locked away in a staff room and completely inaccessible from children, You want to have that documented in a digital platform, because if there's ever an inspection, if there's ever a health issue or a safety issue with a child, you want to be able to show a digital track record that you completed your tasks on time, every time, consistently. And even on the rare occasion you miss one, showing an established pattern of good behavior actually demonstrates your professionalism. Child records, same things. Enrollment forms are missing, or they're missing data on them. Immunization records become stale as families come and go, as the busyness of life creeps up on them. So you want to have automated checks flagging anything that might be incomplete. Geography isn't the problem. Systems are. So Ohio centers average 13.6 violations per site per year, where Pennsylvania only averages 2.7. Same job, different systems, and perhaps even very different requirements. So the gap between the highest and lowest average violations per site across the 6 states average, Pennsylvania being the lowest, Ohio being the highest, it does not necessarily mean that Pennsylvania centers are safer than those in Ohio. It simply might mean Ohio has more stringent requirements, or analysts who are really motivated to write a violation. So more on that as we go along. Compliance isn't a regulatory line item. It's a business multiplier. So every undocumented gap shows up somewhere. It's either showing up in your increased insurance premiums. How many of you have been hearing online, social media, through news articles, at conferences, that there's an insurance crisis right now? Put it in the chat feature. You can just put a thumbs up if you've been hearing about this. Insurance carriers are actually leaving the industry. Why? Their underwriters are looking at all of this violation data and they're saying, look, this is a risky business. We don't want to have to pay out on large claims like this. And what are childcare operators doing to mitigate the risk? So they want to be able to see a consistent, continuous process of improvement. No one expects perfection. Trust me, not your owners, not your leaders, not your legislators. Nobody expects perfection. What they want to see is a documented history of continuous improvement. Now, remediation labor. What you're likely not considering when you're utilizing paper records is how much time it takes to, licensing comes out, they do your inspection, they hand you a report, there's a couple of minor violations. You think, oh, good, we had a great audit. Now I just have to send them these few little documents and a corrective action plan, and it'll be out of my hair and off my plate. Well, it takes longer and more time than you might think. So we've done a significant study. Staff time and labor cost to remedy these violations per location has been analyzed across the same period. And look at that dollar value. It's likely costing you around $1,200 to clear up these violations. So for a center director, they're spending an average of about 40 hours on this, because even if they delegate some of the work to an assistant director, a lead teacher, or someone else inside the operation, they still have to compile it. They still have to verify it. They still have to get it over to licensing, follow through on making sure they've gotten some sort of acknowledgement back, and that's costing you money. This staff time is very precious. You want to use that staff time to be not only engaging the children, keeping them safe, keeping them happy, but establishing that warm relationship amongst colleagues, mentoring one another, and also establishing that warm relationship with families, because families care about who's caring for their child. We all know it's our teachers that keep the kids coming back day in, day out. So consider and just start to measure that the next time you have a licensing audit. And these are just some of the costs that you can measure. What's worse are the ones that are hidden. So think about this. brand and enrollment risk. Every time parents see licensing audit records with violations, it makes them feel concerned. How do I know my child is really safe there? It's a public track record and it follows your name as the director or whoever is the responsible party listed on that license. Insurance exposure, we just talked about that. What you might not recognize is that while kids are going to get bumps, bruises, and scratches inside of a childcare operation, you need to be tracking a health evaluation, a visual check of that child when they enter your facility, then recording every bump, bruise, scrape, and incident that might happen with that child, because over time, you're building a storyline. You're building an auditable track record that can protect you if there's ever an allegation. And I'm sorry to bring up such a challenging topic, but the last thing you want is to have a family make an allegation and you not have the documentation you need to protect your business, protect your team, protect your career, and protect your staff. And so by doing that visual inspection for bumps, bruises, and scrapes that happened over the weekend, and then recording in one place very simply all of the bumps, bruises, and scrapes that happen, you can actually show what's normal for this child compared to what's normal for that child. I don't know about you, but I've had children in my childcare that were very, very accident prone. We're much more likely to have bruises, scrapes, and bumps. And then I had some dainty little children who rarely ever got bumps or bruises or scrapes. You need to have that comparative analysis because it protects you. It protects you in the off chance that something else, gets documented and an allegation gets made. Leadership burden. So you want your staff focused on the things that drive business into your center. Family tours, engaging families, engaging activities, really educating and really nurturing those little minds that have been entrusted to you, right? It's what you got into the business for. Caring for children, educating those little 0 to 5 minds. And believe me, the whole nation wants you doing it because we want strong, intelligent leaders and community members leading our country in the future, right? But if you don't protect your business, it's very easy in a litigious society like ours to have one minor thing turn into a hailstorm of legal activity for you later. Also, we got to think about the educators coming into this particular industry. And while I'm not your average 20-year-old anymore by about 4 decades, I'm not an average person coming into childcare. It's someone who's in their 20s or 30s. And what do we know about them? They were born with technology in their hands. They're used to Googling. They're used to documenting everything in a system. So if you really want to attract top staff and then retain them, they're going to expect you to be leveraging technology and making it easy for them to do their job. All right, moving along. 5 practical moves you can do starting Monday to reduce liability and run with confidence. Because I promised you, I'm going to give you 5 things you can do starting Monday to make life better. So the goal is not perfection, as I said. The goal is reducing the number of things leaders have to hold together. And each strategy maps to 1 or more violation categories we just covered. So strategy number 1, digitize your daily checklist. Every one of you, I know you don't want to put it in your chat, but every one of you likely has an opening checklist, a closing checklist, maybe a sanitation checklist, maybe a playground inspection checklist. Who knows? You might have 50 checklists for all I know. But when they're on paper, they're a liability. They're not telling you anything of the breadcrumb trail of leading or lagging indicators that could be leaving you open to something really risky. So what it solves, playground violations. Having a digital playground inspection leads to less violations and less hazards on the playground. Why? Well, you can actually build in examples of how deep that actual playground fall zone material has to be. You can remind a staff employee who's doing this what degree they're looking for on that slide to make sure it's not too hot. Come on, here in Texas, we know those slides get hot. We need to be measuring the temperature so, little kids are not getting burnt on any of our actual facility grounds. Facility violations. You want to quickly and easily get any of those to-do list maintenance type items reported immediately and sent to the right person without fail. If that's happening through email, it can get bogged down. It can get, buried in your inbox. And then 2 weeks go by before you ever get somebody out to maybe fix something. That sends an unspoken message to the team that reported it, but it also leaves you vulnerable to a potential accident happening on your grounds. Food service violations, same things. So all of these things, you digitize it, you get leading and lagging indicators, you can measure performance, lean in, give additional mentoring and coaching, or literally visual examples, links, all kinds of things to help your team know what's expected at every stage of the tasks that they're completing. So real-time visibility truly matters. Strategy 2, centralize and automate staff records. I'm sorry, at this day and age, it's 2026. It's time to have digital files that can be set with reminders to tell staff, hey, next month your CPR certification expires. I need you to go get it updated and get me that certificate. You don't want to put this on one of your leaders. They have far more important things to do. This is a great use case for technology. So don't put this on a human being. Save human beings for the things that are not rote exercises, but things where you need to develop rapport and you need to actually do some type of observation. So conquer staff training violations, staff qualifications, administrator requirements, background check certifications, all of that stuff can be put into a system and telling you when it's going to expire so that you can make sure it's prevented in the future. All right, next one. Oh, I skipped over 3. Build real-time visibility across every location. So in the chat, anybody got more than one location? You cannot possibly be everywhere all the time, right? Well, any of these little anecdotes, if you look at these compliance status, it can give you a view. It can give you a dashboard across all of your locations, telling you where any hotspots are, any areas that might potentially have some risk to them. And then you can also leverage the inner genius of all of your team members. I don't know about you, but when I owned my center, I thought my staff were some of the most brilliant people ever. And when I'd try to come up with a process or improve something, I learned very early I could come up with a basic outline. Then I would throw it out to my team and say, okay, how do we actually do this? And how do we make it better? And inevitably, my staff would come up with 20 ways to improve the idea that I just shouted out. So never forget that when you're tracking something digitally, it also means that if Susie in classroom A gets her safety checks done in the morning super fast, she's got a system. She's got a rhythm to her. Well, she can teach Jenny in the next classroom what her secret sauce is. And Jenny then can pass it on to the teacher at closing time. So you start to spread that continuous improvement and you build a culture of camaraderie, of sharing, hey, this is how I do this. Hey, this is what I found works really well for me. And so now you start to see continuous improvement happening in all areas of your classroom management as well as your center management. So things like fire drills. Hey, everyone gets busy, but you'd be surprised how often there's a violation because the fire inspection expired and then the fire drill or emergency drill was done 2 days too late. Oh my goodness, right? That just seems so ludicrous. But if you have a system that's reminding you, you'll see it. You'll see it ahead of time and you'll be able to become not only not reactive, but you'll be able to get to predictive, which is where the real secret sauce starts to happen. All right, strategy number 4, embedding safeguarding into daily practice. So it's sad to say this, but when interviewed around abuse allegations, abuse incidents, and I'm talking about everything from, an educator that got overstimulated and maybe, just was a little harsh in her verbal correction of a child, or a little too rough with a child's arm, or all the way up to a severe abuse case or a molestation allegation. All of these things, we think our colleagues and our staff are going to report anything that they see. It's just not true. Why? Because oftentimes they fear retaliation. They fear being a tattletale or a snitch. They fear, hey, maybe I just mistakenly, like maybe I really misunderstood what I just saw. Maybe what I saw, hit me wrong. Maybe I'm having a bad day. And what I saw really wasn't, a symptom. I'll just keep an eye on it. I'm sure Susie isn't doing anything wrong. These are all the kinds of testimonies that we hear during these review processes, where we dig deep into what happened that led to a serious child incident. Oftentimes, we business owners and leaders want to rely on our staff reporting it, but we haven't given them the tools to report it, and we haven't role played it out with them. So I will tell you, some of that is a great way to embed safeguarding into daily practice. All right, making compliance visible to your board. So if you report up to your board, or even if you don't, if you report up to an owner, whoever is at the very top of that food chain, whether it is a board, whether it is just a couple of owners or investors, whether it's your director, at every stage of the business, having visibility and accountability matters, because it doesn't matter if we know it was done. If we can't prove it was done to an outside person, then it might as well not have gotten done. It's like law, right? It's just like the legal process. We all watch the true crime series, and if you've got DNA, you can convict them. Well, it's all about having those actual records, an evidence audit trail with date and time stamped photographic evidence, date and time stamped signed documents that show and score how things are being done and whether they're being done consistently. So all of that to say, make it visible, hold your team accountable. And imagine if you've got some documentation and you have to have a hard conversation with maybe someone who's underperforming. It could simply be that they don't recognize that they're underperforming. Well, now if you've got digital evidence, you can sit down and you can have a true heart-to-heart conversation that doesn't make that employee feel bad, because they can see their own performance. It's a visual representation of it. And they're likely to go, oh man, I didn't realize I was slipping in that area. I'm so glad you've called it to my attention. Now I can change my behavior. I can make sure I'm less distracted, and I can do a better job. So why good systems fail? They still fail. Systems fail when only one person owns them. Compliance cannot depend on memory. It can't depend on training, because that fades over time without accountability and conditioning. Paper systems collapse under constant staff turnover, even if it's very slow turnover. Reactive leadership creates inconsistency. So you want to make sure that it's visible, it's scored, it's consistent, it's conditioned in, and there is shared ownership over this area of your business. Multi-level protection from classroom to boardroom. So children are safe, educators are safe, well-documented compliance means a reduction in anxiety that I might be doing it wrong. Imagine the brand new employee. There's a lot of things that they're trying to learn right in the very beginning. Well, imagine if you've got some coaching built into your platform that's giving them a visual representation of what you expect, a link to a short video, maybe some coaching tips, cheering them on. Imagine how much more confident they'll feel completing their daily tasks within their role. Directors can feel assessment ready. They can be ready with everything in one place and not feeling like they have to scramble the second that licensing comes in. And here's an even better part. So in some states, our licensing analysts come in, they're only there a few hours. It's not really a heavy thing. In some areas of the United States, did you know that licensing analysts sometimes are within that building for up to 8 hours? 8 hours. Such a distraction, such an interruption. I am betting that those directors and staff are pulling their hair out because you know how children are. They're going to get distracted by that. And then you want to make sure that your board members and your owners know why. It gives them demonstrable due diligence. It gives you brand protection, but it's also the supporting information you need when you go to them and ask for greater investment in the facility or a greater investment in new team members. It helps you to justify those costs over the long haul. So going from I think to I know. So reactive, scattered, hoping, chasing paperwork all over the place. Oh, it's in this binder or that binder. It's in this filing cabinet or that filing cabinet. I think we're compliant, but I'm not sure when the last time was that we actually went through all the first aid kits and made sure that nothing had expired. You're in reactive mode. You're reacting to crisis management rather than responding, being assessment ready. So visibility, confidence, and consistency with a proactive leadership style. Time can be redirected to families and children and engaging activities. You have the confidence of knowing you're compliant, and directors can then lead and mentor in a calm manner. So the numbers behind the transformation: save yourself 5 to 8 hours per center, going back to leadership for coaching, for families, for children, for thinking about the business and how it operates. Real partnership from a platform of people that have walked a mile in your shoes. Our platform has a 99% reliable uptime, which means it's rare that we ever go down. Of course, we are ISO certified, as I mentioned earlier. And here are the 3 moves as just a reminder of things you can do starting Monday. Audit your top 3 risk areas. So what are those top 3 risk areas? And then set expiry alerts in any type of a system. You can use calendar reminders, a shared spreadsheet, anything. Just stop relying on memory. But of course, I'd rather you come over and talk to me, and I can show you how easy it is to use one place. Pick one daily checklist to digitize. Get it digital, build digital timestamps, signatures into it so that it's actually feeding you some real data and giving you some trend analysis. All right, so safer, simpler, smarter. I'm trying to end on time here, Harmony. Can you tell? So the strongest programs, oh, good. The strongest programs are not those that are working harder. They're the ones that build the best systems and then evaluate those systems over time. All right, questions? I know, Harmony, you had something you were going to come on and do. I also, I have a QR code. If anyone wants a personalized compliance insights report, I had a QR code here. I'm going to scramble for my QR code and put it up on the screen, Harmony. You can also just email me at cindy@oneplacechildcare.com. And I'll just stand by. You do your thing, Harmony. I'll take some questions if anyone wants to remain.
Okay, awesome. So yes, everyone feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A, and I am going to be sending everyone an email with a link to the recording, information on how to contact Cindy, and a link to the slides that were shared today. But before that, I just briefly want to talk about Playground. If anyone doesn't know, we are a childcare management software, and a lot of what Cindy emphasized today about how important it is to not do any of these things manually, and not that it's not important, but it's mainly just not possible to stay compliant and keep track of everything manually. And Playground is a digital solution, an all-in-one child care management platform. And I actually wanted to show everyone a brief video of Playground's first customer, Dr. Tamar Andrews, going over a little bit about what Playground is. So I will show it to you right now.
So people always ask me what Playground is. I always say Playground is the only software a child care program needs to run and grow. But to me, it's so much more than software. It's the system that gave me back my time as a director so I could spend more time with my teachers, with the kids, with the families, instead of behind a desk. And it actually started in the center that I was directing. And after 20 years as a director, I was overwhelmed. Paperwork, billing, enrollment, oh my God, a dozen different systems that didn't work together. And one day I just looked at my sons and I said, I need you to fix this. And they built Playground right alongside me, solving all the real problems I had every single day. We started in just one center and now it's kind of cool. It's grown to thousands across the country. The biggest thing that it gave me though was time to really support my teachers, time to build relationships with families, time to focus on my program instead of the paperwork. Whether it's enrollment, billing, staffing, communication, or any compliance, Playground really brings everything together so you're spending less time managing your center. So for anybody who's nervous about making a change to Playground, I get it. I'm old. I was a paper and pencil and other apps person too, but you won't be doing it alone. The Playground team really helps guide you every step of the way, from data to training to answering every question you have. Director to director, I hope you choose Playground and realize what it did for me.
All right, so let's see if anyone has any questions. There's also a button on screen if you're interested in Playground and speaking to someone on our team. And let me also put back up, I see you added the QR code. So if you want to get that personalized assessment, then scan the QR code on the screen. We'll leave it open for about another minute, any last minute questions. And again, this is recorded. You will all receive an email. And if you have any questions that you weren't able to ask live, we'll be also sharing Cindy's contact information.
Well, thanks for having me, Harmy. This has been fun. I'm happy to come back anytime that you're looking for someone to try and make compliance fun. Compliance is never the hot, sexy topic.
Well, thank you. You shared some really valuable insights. So I think we will love to have you back again. So thank you. All right, well, we are about out of time, so looks like nobody has any questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and look out for an email from us with all the details on everything we shared today. So thank you, everyone. Bye. See you next time.